Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Hello and welcome to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. If I asked you what is our most precious resource, how would you answer that question? I think a lot of our minds go to something tangible, maybe some sort of material, or if we maybe think of the three C's, is it for Arizona? I don't know what it is, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to challenge you, but it is a C. Our children.
That is true. Yep.
It is our children. And we are ready for an impactful episode of Phoenix Business Radio today. I am very excited about our conversation on behalf of our children and families and trauma-informed workplaces and programs. So with that in mind, I'd like to welcome to the studio Melissa Steimer, CEO of Gabriel's Angels. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you for making time for us today. And you brought some power partners along with you today.
Absolutely.
We have Laura Wiggins, Regional Clinical Director with Menta Group. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being here. And Brady Wald, Principal of Liberty Arts Academy. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
I have a feeling we know a lot more in common than just the few people we mentioned prior to going on board.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of synergy amongst all of us. And I'm really excited about this conversation. So, Melissa, if I could start with you first.
Yep.
Tell us, who is Gabriel's Angels? And who are you to that organization?
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have the same thing from the other two. And then I would like, before we really get in the meat of the conversation, I'd also like to hear a little bit about your background as well. So first, the organization, who you are, and the role you play, and we'll circle back around for a little bit of the background.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
So if you haven't heard of Gabriel's Angels, it's been an organization that has been around really Arizona, the Phoenix Metro, particularly since 2000. It was started by a founder, Pam Gaber, and her dog, Gabe. And really what happened was magical for her to think about, could I do something like this and have others help me in this mission? And our mission, I'll go back to that, is really to inspire confidence and compassion and best behaviors in at-risk youth through pet therapy. So at the end of this, what we do is we try to heal children through the loving pet therapy volunteers that we have. And, Pam went into child crisis nursery way back in 1999 as a volunteer and started to bring her puppy, Gabe. And as Gabe grew there over the last year, every time she left there, she just saw the difference in the children when she left and how many of them got more confidence and empathy. And really, that's where it all began back in 2000. I am now the first really chief executive officer following the founder. Right. Big shoes to fill.
Oh, yes.
And I say, though, they're really new shoes that we're filling, and her shoes really got it started. But we have a chance to really do Gabriel's Angels 2.0, and I'm excited about it because I do not see this organization not being here in Arizona because we need it, and our children need it more than ever.
It's part of our fiber in Arizona and the greater Phoenix area.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Again, welcome to the role. And you've been at it since June, did you say?
June of 2021. Yeah. So very new, 7 months.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting time to come and do that too when we've all been in this uncertain.
Yes. When I took the job, I'm thinking, I'm coming out of it. COVID's, and then we're kind of back and forth. And it makes we'll talk about that, but sometimes our business is challenging because we have to get into partner organizations and rely on volunteers.
Right. Yes. I serve on a couple of boards for nonprofits, and I get it. We rely heavily on volunteers.
Yep.
And yet, to your point, especially with COVID, we're seeing a rise in suicidal ideation, mental health challenges, trauma-informed programs, and helping people heal through trauma is finally, I think, a topic that everyone's willing to have and no longer sweeping it under the rug. So we're grateful for what you do. Great. All right. Let's see. Laura, I almost called you Leslie again. Sorry. Laura, tell us about Menta Group and then your role as Regional Clinical Director.
Sure. So the Menta Group is a nonprofit organization that has been around for 30 plus years. It originated in Illinois and has grown now to expand through Illinois and Arizona. So we operate multiple schools through district partnerships throughout Arizona. All of our students are at risk come to us with special education needs. So majority have emotional disability, so PTSD, trauma, mental illness, or other significant special education needs. And so our program really looks at the whole child and meets them where they're at. So we provide academics as well as social emotional learning for all of our students. So a very strong clinical program that really has changed, I would say, the way that we look at our kiddos, especially those that are experiencing trauma.
Mm-hmm. And where are you serving them? So is it a separate program or adjacent to a school?
So we have a standalone program. It's called Southwest Academy, and that's in Phoenix off of 67th Avenue in Indian School. We have one called Southwest Education Center that is in Casa Grande. We have one called Harbor View Academy, which is right here by the airport. And then we have partnerships with districts. So we have a district partnership with Apache Junction and then one with Tempe as well.
So good.
It's awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I was an educator for years in the Kyrene School District for a long time, I think 15, 16 years. And this is the first that I'm familiar with the Menta group.
Yeah.
So, and I've got kids still in the program and, the school district program. So great to have these opportunities to let more people know about the great work that you're doing. And Brady, tell us about Liberty Arts Academy and what's a principal? No, just kidding. What does being a principal mean to you? And tell us about Liberty Arts Academy.
Well, I'll address the what does the principal mean to me? It's everything. Our kids need us more than ever before, pandemic or no pandemic. And so, being able to create opportunities for our kids and our families is incredibly important. So that's really been my role as a principal and educator for the last 21 years here in Arizona. To tell you a little bit about Liberty Arts Academy, we're a public charter school in Mesa, Arizona. And I've been there for 5 years. Before that, I was working in a variety of district schools, Tempe, and absolutely love everything that Arizona education has to offer. As far as Liberty Arts Academy, we are a different kind of school, and we dare to be different. Our mission is we do whatever it takes for students, families, and the community, and we do that in so many different ways. We are inspired by the country of Finland, where we really value the core values of family, education, and play. And so we create a lot of different opportunities when it comes to social emotional learning, recess, creating that whole child experience when they come to Liberty Arts Academy. And it's really important that we do create those opportunities and provide those opportunities for growth, not only academically, but emotionally and socially as well.
Yeah. So you both mentioned the whole child, right? So for our listeners, let's really be clear and define that. What is the difference between teaching to the whole child and then what is this other thing? Could either of you speak to that? Because I think that's really an important thing.
Sure. I'll go first,
Sure.
Brady. Traditionally, education really focused on academics, and we looked a lot at test scores and grades and performance. And what looking at the whole child means now, at least for me, is really looking at, are they thriving socially? Are they thriving emotionally? Are we seeing those academic gains? And looking at new responses if the child isn't thriving socially or emotionally or academically, and providing new and innovative ways to address those needs.
Perfect. Anything to tag on to that?
Yeah, and I always have the philosophy that kids are more than a test score. So yes, academics is incredibly important, don't get me wrong. But like, Lori just said, we have to focus on the social emotional well-being of our kids more than ever before. And we do that. And as far as the whole child experiences, it goes beyond academics. It goes into, all of our kids have 3 recesses a day. The play and socialization is so incredibly important, which will contribute to academic gains. We all know that. We also know that if kids are happy and if kids are excited about learning and they develop that love and passion for learning, it is inevitable that kids are going to grow in so many different ways as well. And so I think it's important as educators now than more than ever before that we rethink the way that education can really happen in our schools, and also rethink what that educational model can look like. And so there's so many different educational models out there, and it's important as professionals to really look at those models and how we can really meet the individual needs of our kids.
Yeah. Yes. Individualizing programs teaching to the whole child. What I'm thinking of as you're describing that as a former educator and a parent, right, and a trauma guide for that matter, if we don't have the baseline for learning, if our belly is empty, if our heart is aching, if we are struggling socially, then when we sit down at a desk or in a group or whatever the place is to learn, even if the opportunity is rich with opportunities to learn and explore, if we're not full, we have an excruciatingly difficult time learning and taking anything else in because we're in survival mode. Right. So thank you both for explaining that. I would love to take it back to Melissa and just have you talk about Gabriel's Angels and why do we have these two educational professionals here with us? How does it all come together?
Yeah, it really comes together because we do our work through all these partnerships. And it is these partnerships in Title I schools, crisis nurseries, special education schools. It is where those kids that we believe doing the pet therapy will meet their needs. And really around that social emotional well-being of the child is where we've seen the difference that pet therapy can make. So we couldn't do it without a Laura and a Brady and all the others. We have 120 different partner agencies around the state of Arizona where we're working. And in fact, the demand is huge. I could probably say it's more like that we know of 150, almost 200, but we just don't have enough volunteers. And we can talk about that. It's important that people think about, is there a way I can give back? If I'm sitting next to a pet that I know could be well behaved and potentially go through this process to become a registered team, they can really give back in a big way.
Explain how Gabriel's Angels works with volunteers then. I mean,
So it doesn't, not everybody has that. I have 5 dogs myself, and not everybody has that dog that you believe will be able to sit with a child, work with a child as they go into these programs. So really what we do is if you have an interest and you have a dog or any pet, actually, I won't just say dog because we've had many horses. We do have a cat. We will definitely look at other pets, but you need to go through a registration process. So we work with 2 national registering agencies that really evaluate that pet and understand that it will be able to go into these partner agencies along with the handler. It's a team. It is not one or the other. And if you think about it, the pet's there for a lot of the work that needs to happen, but it's the handler who really helps to bring out also in that child what needs to happen in that time that they're with them.
And how long does it take for a handler to get certified or whatever the terminology is?
It really depends on where someone's at. I personally, as someone who believe one of my dogs at one point could do this, it's just a puppy. You have to have at least a pet for a dog's sake, a year or older. It's got to have training. So whether you've done it yourself or you take it through training courses, you need to be able to spend that time with the dog to ensure that it's ready and then evaluate it. So it could be anywhere from 3 weeks up to months. Now, I will tell you what's also happening in this COVID pandemic world is a lot of these national agencies that register, the 2 that we use, are all done by volunteers as well. So those evaluators are volunteering our team or evaluating our teams and our volunteers. And we're finding that they're not around right now. So the wait list is really long to get them evaluated. So our hope is, the quicker we can get someone through that and teamed up with whatever program makes sense. We also know not every dog is great with all of our programs. So you may be better one-on-one with a child or in a group. And we do a variety of different programs.
And so making sure that you have enough of those pets to fill those needs, right? If somebody's listening and they think they may have a pet that would be a candidate, what's the best way to get in touch?
The very best way is go on to gabrielsangels.org. If you look at volunteer on the homepage, there's a button right there. It will take you through a little bit of content about what it means to volunteer and then sign up once a month for about an hour. We do it virtually, so it makes it really easy to commit. You don't have to go anywhere, and you will get on a Zoom call with potentially 10, 12 other people. You'll learn for about an hour about what it takes. And then we've got volunteer coordinators that will work with you over the course of that time to help you get registered.
I love that. And is the handler necessarily the owner of the pet? That is?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is your lifelong pet, and you just know it's kind of like anybody who takes their pet they know they're a working dog and they can be really great at agility or, frisbee. It's really your pet that you're out there working in a way that you believe will make the most difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do people typically learn? Is it through word of mouth? I mean, I guess I'm listening to it through a lens of how can we help you get more volunteers? If that's the greatest need right now,
it is.
How do we help you do that?
It is through a variety of different ways. Obviously, in the community of pet therapy, we have the ability to access people who speak very highly of what they do to others and referral. But we've got to think outside the box as well, because we have such a huge demand for our programs and just not enough teams. So we have to think about it. I mean, if you're someone, and there's a lot of people that do, that take care of their pets, they are their family. Think about whether or not you could commit the time to go through that program. We'll help you. We'll help you all along the way. In fact, we're kind of reimagining that. I think one of the things we could do better is really guide you along closer, because you go off to these two agencies. It's up to them to evaluate the pet. And then until that happens, you don't come back to us. We want to kind of help you along with that process. So we're open to having discussions with anyone and helping them figure this out if this is the right way for them to be a part of it. Yeah.
And remind me again, what areas of the Valley do you serve? I mean, I know you're obviously reliant on these incredible, but all over the Metro Phoenix area.
As well as Arizona.
Okay, that's what I was curious.
We do programs. Tucson is probably our closest to Phoenix in terms of a mature program. We have about 18 teams down there. Here we have about 70 teams active right now.
Yeah.
And then up in Prescott, Yavapai County, we have a couple of teams. But our goal is we have people in Flagstaff asking us about it that actually already are teams and just doing ad hoc work. So there's also people out there who may have their dogs registered and are going on their own, because that can happen. If you come with a program like Gabriel's Angels, there's a lot of support that comes along with it. And I think at some point when you hear from Laura and even Brady, one of the things we're looking at is we need to ensure that our volunteers really feel a part of a community and get their own training and support. So what does trauma-informed care look like for them so that they understand what they're going into and what they're facing? And so we'll give you training, support, supplies, the opportunity versus going on your own. And you're part of a really great community that loves to do this work and help the kids.
What have you guys seen what are the benefits? What does it look like on your end when one of these sweet pets come to school and speak to that? We've heard from Alyssa, of course, from that perspective, but why would you align with Gabriel's Angels? What's the benefit and how's that making an impact with you guys?
It's a huge part of our culture and what we do. Liberty Arts Academy, our PBIS model is Bark to Excellence, where we teach kids to be brave, attentive, responsible, and kind. And so we are the Bulldogs for our mascot. So we have this dog theme that's already happening in our school. So it just kind of fit that we had this really impactful community partnership with Gabriel's Angels. As far as the effects, smiles on kids' faces, to confidence, to the impact, the soft touch of a paw on a kid's heart is absolutely incredible. And so it has had a profound impact on not only our kids and our families, but on the culture of our school.
Yeah.
And we want kids excited about coming to school. And Gabriel's Angels plays a huge part of that.
And how often are they there approximately?
We're very fortunate. We have 4 teams, either that are in the ABC program, which is animals, books, or children. And then we also have pet therapy, where we meet with groups of kids. So we have a lot to offer. And Gabriel's Angels has really provided those opportunities for our kids.
Yes, our volunteers love it. And Brady, I think one of the things, I've gone into the school and actually been there when the programming was happening. He embodies this mission of what we're doing, along with what his school's philosophy, and even has a wall of every Gabriel's Angels pet therapy team that has ever touched and gotten into the doors of his program. So he really celebrates that as a part of the school.
Yeah, lives and breathes it for sure.
Well, we've had him here, for 5 years.
Yeah.
It was one of the very first phone calls I made for a community partnership
Yeah.
because we knew, the impact that Gabriel's Angels would have. And so we've probably graduated well over 50 in the ABC program, in addition to probably servicing over 100 plus kids in the 5 years that we've been here. So I'm just super grateful for the community support and having an organization like Gabriel's Angels that is willing to come into any school free of charge to have that immediate impact on kids.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. And you've embraced it, welcomed it, celebrated it, and are a great model and example of what other schools ought to be doing as well. So from your perspective, what are the benefits? What have you seen and noticed? And why is this so important to you and the folks you represent?
Sure. So our group, the Menta group, we take in kids that are at risk, kids that would otherwise be suspended or expelled or not have a place to go. And so our mission is to never give up. And so having a team that comes in that provides that unconditional love, that unconditional support to our kids is so life-changing for them. It is so healing. I have seen kids who would not read. As a matter of fact, they'd probably take the book and throw it at our heads. But if a dog's there sitting next to them, they will read to the dog. We've had individual therapy teams that come in that really try to dig a little bit deeper into some of the trauma that our kids have experienced. And with the animal therapy team there by their side, kids are able to really process some of these trauma memories that are life-changing and really healing. We have groups that come into our whole classes, and they are teaching about empathy and compassion. And a lot of our kids, unfortunately, have grown up in homes where abusing animals is common. They've seen abuse, they've been abused. And so to be able to connect with an animal or a therapy team to kind of work through that and learn some new skills is so powerful to see. Of course, we see smiling faces, not only for the kids, but for our staff. They love the teams when they come in. Parents come in, they see the therapy team. They are just so excited to see innovative in different ways of really working with kids.
Can I just say one thing? We've talked a lot about trauma and, reflecting back on these last couple of years with COVID and our schools and our organizations need organizations like Gabriel's Angels more than ever before. When we talk about levels of trauma, all kids have experienced high levels of trauma.
Yep.
And so we have to look at the big picture here of there are so many kids that need support.
Yep.
And Gabriel's Angels and the social emotional learning that we continue to talk about just as high up there as compared to, our academic need.
Yeah.
And so being mindful of trauma, but also that all kids have experienced some type of level of trauma these last couple of years.
Absolutely. And I'll say all people, right?
Yeah.
So yes, of course, our kids. And I mentioned earlier that I've found that the kids respond quicker to trauma therapy, depending on what the modality is, than adults. Sometimes it's because they have a shorter trauma story. And really, we all have been through some sort of trauma. And when I work with folks, I often say, when I try to explain trauma, it's the gap or it's the split between how our brain knows that it ought to function, but when we're in trauma or we've had traumatic experience, we get stuck there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And would love for you to jump in too, Laura, if you have a different take or you want to put some meat around the bones that I'm creating. But we're stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And when we're there, our brain functions differently. And so that split or that gap or that void, when like even just the traumatic things that I've been through the last couple of years, I'm like, I know that I was performing here at this level, but because I've had this experience, there's this gap and this void for me. So I've had to heal to be able to squeeze that gap a little bit. The other thing I'll suggest too is that when someone's gone through a traumatic experience, their emotional age tends to hover and stay stuck at that level. So let's say you experience something traumatic at 13 and you're in your 50s. You're likely going to show up in an argument, some stressful moment, or some challenge as a 13-year-old instead of a 50-year-old something. So jump in there and help put some meat around that.
So I think sometimes when we use the word trauma, for example, we often think of these huge traumatic events, and they absolutely can be. But you can also have low doses of toxic stress that really do change the body and the brain permanently. It changes the architecture of how the brain develops. In particular, kiddos from 0 to 5 is really, really important. But it can happen at all ages. And so you have kids that are not developing as neurotypical individuals sitting in classrooms. It is, of course, hard for them to learn their academics or to learn these social emotional skills. And so the brain can absolutely get stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze response. And those kiddos are easily triggered. We know that the research shows us that they have later in life health outcomes. I can talk a little about ACEs if this is a good time.
Yes. What is ACEs?
All right. So ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. It was a study back in the 90s by Kaiser Permanente and the CDC, and they looked at 17,000 individuals, adults, middle class. And the reason that's important is trauma does not just pick on those of low income. It happens in all individuals everywhere. What they did is they looked at these adverse experiences in childhood, and they evaluated their current health status. And what they found is those individuals that had the higher adverse childhood experiences had later in life health outcomes. So it was a survey. It asked questions like, did you experience sexual abuse or physical abuse? Did you grow up in a house with someone with mental illness? The higher your score, the higher your ACEs. What they were finding is that individuals with ACEs had a more likely chance of having a stroke or a heart attack, developing diabetes, having lung issues like asthma, obesity, weight gain, and of course, on the higher end, suicidality, early death. You're more at risk for substance abuse. In kiddos, I can speak to experience. We see really high rates of obesity, asthma, food allergies, things like that in our kiddos. And so what that study has done is it's really made us look at how these adverse childhood experiences impact our kiddos. And in the educational setting, we see it impacting them through the ways that they learn. As you mentioned earlier, if you're coming in unavailable for learning that day because maybe your dad was incarcerated the night before and you didn't get breakfast, it's really hard to sit in a seat and listen to a 60-minute math lesson. The body is designed actually to not focus on the math lesson. It focuses on fight, flight, or freeze. Protection. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Did you have something to add?
Well said.
Really.
Can I mention one more thing that I think is really important to this topic today? Arizona is ranked 33rd in the United States, and 17% of our kiddos from 0 to 17 have had 2 or more ACEs. And I want to remind you, these are really big deal things: sexual abuse, physical abuse, domestic violence. So as a teacher, as an educator, you're looking at having about a third of your class with 2 or more ACEs at any school here in Arizona.
And I'd be curious even more these days with the trauma that's happening with even just COVID and the pandemic, how ACEs would be interesting if they come back and even look at it from that.
100%.
They have to.
Yeah.
100%. The impact of the pandemic has taken kiddos that were doing well and able to self-regulate and put them into a new state of dysregulation.
And again, to Brady's point earlier, when we were talking about how important it is that our kids, we help them heal through these experiences and whatever modalities we can provide for them and teach the whole child. If our parents aren't healthy and whole, right? And that's where I focus my time and attention typically is with adult clients who are working through their trauma stories and trying to make sense. When you talk about the statistics of disease, right? Dis-ease becoming disease. We haven't even touched on the rate of divorces or single parenting and all that. So this whole social, emotional, mental conversation is critical. And to go back to what you had said early on in the conversation, Laura, having been an educator, I remember early on when I was coming through NAU as an educator, I thought we're spending so much time talking about the brain and the academic part of the brain, like memorization and again, to your point, test scores and that sort of stuff. But we're a whole package, right? We are a body. We're a soul or a spirit. I'm not looking at talking about religion, but there's a soul, right? There's this soulful part of us in addition to our brain and our thinking mind. So when we continue to teach in some of these, traditional teaching settings, and we just continue to pour and dump into the kid's brain without taking into account everything, the container that they live in, the environment that they show up in, and their heart and their social wellness. How is it that we've gotten so stuck here so long, right? I mean, that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, and the answer is a place like Gabriel's, because I truly believe that this whole human-animal bond, I have felt it all my life. I mean, I never grew up where I had this family that was huge into animals, but I was, and they eventually came along with that and accepted me for bringing every animal home and having animals as a part of my life. But there's research institutes that have been opening up on the whole human-animal bond. And I just really believe that that's such a magical piece of this healing that it really can make a difference in a child because of that ability to feel empathy. I worked for a program years ago. I've always been a nonprofit and worked for a humane society back in Nebraska. And there was a program we did. This was, 18 years ago. We did a program where we went into the juvenile detention center and actually took the most unadoptable dogs and had them live with these kids in the juvenile detention center. And every week, a trainer would come in and teach them about training, and they are learning all that positive reinforcement and having it come back to them, that it just opens their world up to, this is not what I got when I was, and why I'm probably in the situation I am in. And we would find that, first of all, they would be better in the juvenile detention setting and behave there. But then these dogs became the most adoptable dogs and high on the list. Everybody wanted them because they spent such quality time with these kids.
Yeah. So with trauma, one of the biggest things we can do is develop relationships. And Gabriel's Angels does that for kids. When you have a kid who's stuck in fight, flight, or freeze, their body is dysregulated. As adults or animals, we can co-regulate with these kiddos. So making that eye contact, having that close contact. And so having a therapy team come into a school is a low demand relationship for these kids. So because the dog isn't going to call them names or yell at them or hurt them. The dog is there to provide that comfort and that co-regulation. And that is what we've seen in our programs with Gabriel's Angels coming in, is kiddos that were really shut down and checked out because of the trauma they've experienced. And through the relationship with the animal teams, we saw real healing.
And it's less of a commitment from a parent perspective than, getting a dog from a shelter or purchasing a dog or whatever, right? We went through a traumatic experience 2 years ago, my son and I, and lost his dad, my husband, to that. And my son was asking for a dog. And unlike you, I kept thinking, I can't have one more responsibility. I've never really been a dog owner lover. I thought I'll be ill-equipped. I don't know how to do it. We were able to adopt a dog, and she'll be 2 years in April. But boy, has it been a commitment. So when we have this opportunity through the schools and through Gabriel's Angels, if not everybody is ready to take care of a pet at home, right, then there's this incredible opportunity there. Yeah, because it was a big commitment for me, but I was able to do it. And to your point, Laura, I've seen a huge difference in my son, the responsibility, the willingness to just slow down and breathe and connect and just make that, beautiful relationship work. It's incredible.
I feel like we're kindred souls here because I tell the story and Brady's heard it before. I mean, before this job even became an idea that it was, out there and I had the ability to get it. I was dealing with a teenage son. He's 17. He's been facing mental health issues. We've noticed it since probably he was 14. We just kind of, tried to help him where we could. We already had 4 dogs, but he came to us and said he felt like there wasn't one of those 4 that was his. that he could take on. And so he convinced us, and we looked at different rescue sites and finally landed on this puppy that is the love of his life. And he went off to college. He's his first year of college this year, but he is bound and determined that the second he can move off campus and in his own place, that this dog will be with him. And in fact, he's getting ready to go back tomorrow. And all he talked about yesterday and the weekend was, I'm going to miss you, Duval. I'm going to miss you. And he loves on this dog like you would not believe. I've just seen the difference it makes at home personally. So
absolutely.
I understand.
I would imagine in the conversations that you hear the kids and the staff and the teachers have at school, long after Gabriel's angel friend come, what do you call them when they come? They're a team or they're
team.
Long after they've left, the kids are likely still writing about them in stories, and teachers are using them as examples when they're trying to problem solve, that sort of thing. Do any stories come to mind specifically, and maybe not, that you'd be willing to share, that the impact that goes long beyond when that team has been there physically?
Well, I have a couple. One, not physically in our school, but it was during COVID when everybody was remote learning. And we all thought, this is going to be challenging. Maybe Gabriel's Angels not being able to be in person was going to be a challenge as well. But I'll never forget this student who was in her dad's tire shop. And she made a point that she was going to be on that Google Meet with that Gabriel's Angels team every Tuesday. And there are tires. I was part of the Google Meet, but there are tires being wheeled behind her. There are customers all over, and she is focused in on what she needs to be doing, working with that ABC team. And it's incredible. We never thought that, we talk about them being in person, but our kids needed, something, especially during that remote instruction. So that is one that really stands out. And then another one just recently was, we had a child that was part of the ABC program that was scared of dogs. And it's like, well, why did they volunteer to be a part of this program? And, her family wanted her to be, more comfortable. There was a little bit of trauma with dogs. And so this handler, Camus and Michelle, gave this child a stuffed cat. She loved cats. And we named this cat Oreo. And while they're being a part of the ABC program, she held onto the cat. And within a couple visits, this kiddo would walk into my office and was no longer afraid of dogs. And so it's, we think of all of these different things that are going through kids' brains and the trauma and everything else going on in their lives. This kid is no longer afraid of dogs and is comfortable and is able to not only be comfortable, but can read books to dogs, which is the coolest program ever. And I know we've highlighted a lot about our group therapy, but the ABC program, Animals, Books, and Children, is another dimension of this organization where kids can read to a dog one-on-one for 14 weeks. It is the coolest program ever. And one of the things that my parents or prospective parents will come into our school and be like, how can I be a part of this program? And, Melissa talked about, having more opportunities, and we need more volunteers. We need more dogs out there to provide these opportunities for kids. But those are a couple that just kind of jump out.
Such great stories.
Yeah, that program started 5 years ago, and we've seen the difference in the kids' reading motivation, the love of reading. They've gone up grade levels. I mean, that is one of the most important things when you think academic, is if they're not reading by that third grade, their chances are not great to continue to succeed. So having that program and doing it with this pet, which already had been research out there, there's so many of those programs where these kids reading to pets, again, the non-judgmental, the ability to just sit there and feel comfortable and get that confidence when you're looking at this pet has been amazing. And the story with the girl and the cat, I have many pictures. Michelle actually works on staff as well. She started as a volunteer and continues, but she'd bring back with the girl just putting that stuffed cat all over Camus, and they became, friends, the stuffed cat and Camus. So it was a great story.
What a great segue too, to find the comfort level. Any stories come to mind with your crew?
Gosh, there's so many. One of the teams that was my favorite was a pit bull that was born with a birth defect. And so only the front two legs were able to walk. And so bringing that in to a classroom of kids that also felt like they were defects was really, really powerful, because they got to connect with an animal that had to overcome challenges and struggles and learn new ways of doing things. And a lot of the kids that we work with could really, really relate to that. So I feel like that went beyond even, the great stuff that Gabriel's Angels teaches kids already.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like aha real moments for those kiddos.
And that's interesting. We just started last week. There's a lady, this is a great testament to whatever you come with as a volunteer, we want to take you if you've got this amazing, pet alongside of you and are committed to it. We have someone who has a service dog, so that's different than the registered therapy dog, because service is for that person with their disabilities or challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a service dog, but actually also got it co-registered to be a therapy dog. And it knows when to switch into different ways, but she's in a wheelchair with disease. And this dog now is going into a program doing ABC in a school in Peoria where a lot of the population are on the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're seeing this person who's in a wheelchair with a disability with their dog, who's their service dog, and now trying to help these kids better read, really kind of comes full circle to this empathy again and compassion.
Yeah, it's that relationship part. Like when we talk about trauma-informed schools or trauma-sensitive or trauma-responsive, there's so many words these days, but it's really a focus on that safety and connection. And I feel like Gabriel's Angels provides that for kiddos.
And you had mentioned, Brady, free. It's a free service.
That's right.
So where does the funding come from then?
So, yes, 21 years now, it has been free. We want to be able to provide it as this additional service in all of these programs. And so we rely on the community to support us. We do not get government funding. I believe there's opportunity given all the mental health space and the COVID dollars that are out there. We have the ability to potentially get some of that. But for now, we solely rely on businesses, individuals. The beauty of us is this Arizona tax credit, which all of us are lucky to take advantage of. It's really around, it started as the working poor, but really around, helping children's family, the disadvantaged. And because we really are child welfare, but do it through a pet, usually an animal welfare organization doesn't get the benefit of the tax credit. We do.
Good.
So you have a place if you love pets as well and know that they can heal to be able to make that tax credit gift to us.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you could be part of the program. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So for an organization, we talked about volunteers getting involved. We talked about where the funding comes from. And of course, you're always looking for more. I know you've had some big galas. It's just, again, kind of a mainstay here in the Metro Phoenix area to participate in that. Are there other events, and maybe it's shifted a little bit with COVID, but how else can our listening community get involved as a donor, individually as, of course, a tax credit, but where else?
Well, that is evolving as I've come in, because one of the things we've talked about, it makes it harder, when a lot of these companies out there and people that are part of Girl Scout groups, Boy Scout groups are looking to volunteer. It becomes a little harder because we can't get them into, some of these schools. There's some regulations and stringent guidelines that our teams have to follow and have the fingerprint clearance and stuff. But what we're trying to do is find ways that make it easier for someone to maybe want to help and support. And so it's always helpful to ensure that you go to our Amazon wish list and be able to look at things that we need, because supplies are so important to equip the volunteer teams with. So if you have the ability to go out and find the opportunity to have people give you those items in kind, that's a great way to participate without thinking you're just giving your dollars. We're trying to build on that more and more, because we really want our teams and our volunteers to feel supported and equipped. So there's many stories like teachers where they're going out and purchasing their own things and being able to create this experience in these activities with the kids. So we'd like to be able to ensure they don't have to worry about that and can just handle it with their team, and then we could give them gift cards or whatever.
Are there specific programs or ways in which either enterprise level businesses or small to medium businesses can get involved, or is it really just the things that we're talking about?
It's a little bit of the things we're talking about. It, like I said, it makes it hard one day. We do, on occasion, have an opportunity where you can pack, the supply kits that we give to the volunteers.
Mhm.
So that's not all the time, but that is an opportunity. We
Sure.
just had a company. So these ABC kids, when they graduate, they go through this program for 12 to 14 weeks. The team actually ensures that they have all kinds of activities to do, but we're actually now, through this company, able to leave them with a backpack full of goodies as well. So that's something that I think could start maybe
Oh,
a
yes.
movement and an opportunity, because backpacks are an important part of any child during the, right back to school. And I thought that was a great idea, that these kids can walk away now after they've gone through that program with that backpack.
And it's that constant reminder, a little bit like the kitty, the stuffed kitty. It's that constant
Yeah.
reminder of that relationship.
Yeah.
Continue. And a lot of companies I know will go and, typically at Christmas time or times where we're being more mindful around giving and giving back, companies will go and do kind of a backpack drive on their own.
Mhm.
So how nice that they could align with Gabriel's Angels and provide a bigger impact and a greater opportunity with all the different ways in which you serve.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they want to put a little treat in there because that child goes home, maybe they most likely have a pet, because so many people own pets these days, that
Yes.
that also allows them to give back to their own pet as well when they
Yeah.
go home with that backpack. But
love it.
the different ways we're looking at, but that is one of them
Mhm.
that I think could be helpful for the community to support.
Great things ahead for Gabriel's Angels,
Yeah.
and really pleased that you're sitting in the driver's seat. I know it's not you alone, right? It
No,
takes
I say it
takes
is not about me. This
you.
is, our community of staff, teams, volunteers. Brady's on our board. He's so passionate about this. When
so good.
asked to serve on our board, he said yes, and is such a huge advocate that way as well.
I would be remiss as we close out if I didn't circle back to the second question I said we were going to go get to right away, but it didn't seem to make sense to do it then. But I would love for each of you to talk a little bit about your background before you landed where you landed. I always like to hear a little bit about your, your trajectory as a leader. Would you mind starting for us?
Sure.
So why did you land at Gabriel's Angels?
Yeah.
But before that, tell us a little summary about
It's a culmination of my career, I would say. So service has always been at the heart of who I am. I was reflecting on this. I grew up in a Catholic family, went to church. Parents, took us there, a drug, whatever you want to call it. But you get to church, and service just was ingrained. I didn't think about it. Went to public high school and then chose to go to a Catholic university, actually. So I went to Creighton University and ended up getting my degree. And instead of taking spring breaks, I did, mission trips with the kids, and we went to small communities and helped them rebuild and stuff. So it just became a part of me. And then I fell into nonprofit and fundraising, and really just that became my career. I thought I was going to go into law or, be in politics, and it really just became who I was. And so my whole entire career has been working for some amazing missions. Many of them I started with at-risk youth, actually, at a behavioral health group home, and did fundraising there, and then really went on to animal welfare, which has always been my love. I've worked for some national organizations, PetSmart charities here locally, and Arizona Animal Welfare League, and UMOM. So I was at UMOM New
Yeah.
Day Center. So really, to me, if you can think about it, the
I was
connection.
going to say it's the culmination. I kind of say the same thing about Business RadioX. This is the culmination of everything I've ever done. I've just been led to.
I feel, and these are times where you go, this has got to be meant to be. And
Yeah.
that's a whole other story in itself. But I really believe that I am meant to be here. And it has always been my love of, and then personally, as I told the story with my own teenage son, to see this, love of this pet, I couldn't think of another place to be right now than at this organization in this time. It's not easy. It will continue to be challenging, but I am driven to ensure that it is an organization that really is here for the state, and with the help of all of our partners and community of support. I mean, why can't we be more?
Right.
So much opportunity.
And as Brady and Laura both have said a couple of times, these are life-changing experiences. You and your team are providing life-changing opportunities for these kids and their
Absolutely.
families. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and communities, right? Because,
Yeah.
it's all. How about you, your background, and how did you land where you've landed?
Yeah. So about 24 years ago, I took my first teaching job in the inner city of Chicago. I had kiddos that had emotional disabilities and behavioral disabilities, and I learned a lot. And one of the things I learned is that relationships are key. And I was doing a lot more what felt like at the time counseling therapy than teaching. So I moved out to Arizona and I went to ASU and got my master's in social work. And so my work with the Menta group kind of was a culmination of all my different passions and degrees. So I'm able to do the clinical work that I love. I'm still working with kids with special needs. I'm a huge advocate for kids with special needs. And about 6 years ago, I went to a talk and I met up with a girlfriend who told me about ACEs. And I thought, how have I not heard of this? I went to ASU. I have a graduate degree. Nothing in my entire teaching career had I heard about ACEs. And I just, from that point on, became so passionate and consuming of the information. The information is really powerful. And once you learn it, you can't unlearn it. So I was lucky enough to work for an organization that was really innovative. And I said, hey, guys, we need to really put some thought into this. We had a really strong clinical program. We had positive behavior interventions and supports, but not all kids were responding. And it was the kids that were stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze. And so we really had to evaluate how we were doing things and change some of our adult responses. And with that came a partnership with Gabriel's Angels. The effects of that it's hard to measure because we're so, really new in this journey, but kids are coming to school, attendance is up, graduation rates are higher, our teacher retention is higher. There's just so many amazing outcomes that we've seen from partnerships with Gabriel's Angels and just the implementation of these trauma-sensitive practices.
Fantastic. Again, another example of how life has just led you to what you're doing now.
It really has.
Beautiful. Brady, how about you?
Well, I come from...
You shared a little bit about it, but I would like to hear more.
Small town, North Dakota. And as I just watched the news this morning, I don't miss any of that as far as how cold it can be in the wintertime.
73 or 74 again?
Yeah,
oh, my goodness.
Getting weather reports from my parents is always fun. But, I came from a family of educators. My mom was a kindergarten teacher for 34 years. My dad was a music and band teacher for 37. And one of the things I thought I would never do is be a teacher. So I went to school to be an architect. And after a year, I just I don't know if that's my love. So I started looking at, what have I done that I actually love doing? And was working with kids, coaching, teaching. And so I rethought, about what my career could be. And, they always say if you'll never work a day in your life if you enjoy what you do and love what you do. And that's how I feel. And so 21 years ago, I got in a car and I moved to Arizona and went from one extreme to the other, going to the desert, and never looked back. I absolutely love it here. Met my wife here, have 3 kids, a 3rd grader and a 6th grader, and just finished up at ASU for my 3rd son. I always tell people my best professional development as a leader has been being a dad. I've seen where they struggle. I see where they thrive in school, inside and outside of school. And I try to apply that in what I do on a daily basis. The stigma of being a principal has always been the fear or, the disciplinarian. And like Laura mentioned earlier, it's all about relationships. If I can develop a long-lasting relationship where my kids know that I believe in them and I trust in them and I have high expectations for them, and if I can create that love for learning in my school, then I feel like I've done a good job. I love what I do. And, I covered this earlier, is just creating a different a model for kids that is just different. I always make the argument too, and I'll just kind of finish up with this. If you look at the cell phones that we had from 10 years ago and what we carry today, to the cars that we drive, to the washer and dryers that we now have in our houses, yet we look at the educational model from 25, 50 years ago and what it looks like today. It looks the same, yet everything else in this world has evolved.
Right.
And so it's time for us to take advantage and be able to take our educational model and evolve like everything else. And so 5 years ago, I had this wonderful opportunity. Dr. Bill Coates, our founder at the Leona Group, was able to look at me across the table one day and say, you have the autonomy, you have the flexibility to create your dream school. I've never been told that before. And it was amazing experience to be able to take a look at what we're doing now and what we can do today versus what we did 25, 50 years ago. Because kids have changed.
Yeah.
We have changed.
Yes.
This world has changed. And so if we truly care about kids, then it's time for us to really take advantage of the community partnerships that we have, like Gabriel's Angels, and be able to put some different things in place to, that will really enhance and truly get our kids to grow emotionally, physically, and educationally. And I feel like we can do that.
Oh, yes. I'm very hopeful. Given the opportunity to listen to so many conversations like this across all sectors of business, private, public, nonprofit, I feel like Arizona, not only am I proud to be an Arizonan, but we are also paving the way. You spoke to where we rank educationally right now, but we're going to change that. I have no doubt. And we're starting to really kind of come together and have these collective conversations and help each other, right? I can't help but think that folks listening to this conversation today are going to hopefully reach out to all three of you and say, hey, heard you on Business Radio X, and how can I help, or how can I learn from you? And whatever that is, we strongly encourage people to get more and more involved. As we close out the segment today, if you could each just share, and I'll start with Melissa again, share the organization you represent and where we can find you, either the online, social media, whatever, and you individually as well, if you're on LinkedIn, that sort of thing as well. So great. Round it out for us.
Well, thank you. Again, I envision a world where there is a pet in every school, every program. So that's where I hope we can get to today. But Melissa Steimer, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Gabriel's Angels. And of course, I said earlier, gabrielsangels.org is where you can find a lot of information. We have pretty active social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And then we also, I myself personally am on LinkedIn under Melissa Steimer, and would love to connect with anybody who has a heart for children that are suffering and know how much pets can make a difference. I'll talk to you all day about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
So you can find me at thementagroup.com. It's menta.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Laura Wiggins. I also run once a month a group for teachers, educators, anyone working with kids in any capacity. It's the first Wednesday of every month through the ACES Consortium in the state of Arizona. So I invite, it's at 4:00. It's online to check it out. And it's an awesome community to learn more about ACEs and trauma-sensitive practices. And through if you find me on the website or whatnot, feel free to email me. I love to talk about this more. It's a huge passion of mine. And so I think to get the more knowledge out there, more people involved, the greater we'll be able to help our kids.
Awesome. And the Menta Group, the website is menta.com.
Yes.
Yeah, love it. Oh, my goodness. I'm so honored to get to know all three of you today and have a sense that we'll be doing a lot more together. Brady, how about for you?
Yeah, we can be found at libertyartsacademy.com. We are all over social media, so Facebook and Instagram. I do have a LinkedIn as well. But, you talked a lot about word of mouth. You want to find a school and an organization where people are talking about you in a positive light. And so we really try to do that where, you're creating that excitement not only for your kids, but creating that excitement for parents and families too. And so that's why there's such a strong message when it comes to the value of family. And taking good care of our families is really important too. So we're all over the place. And definitely check us out at libertyartsacademy.com.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And this has been a fantastic hour. And I know I promised that it would go quickly. Hopefully you feel that way. But we covered a lot of ground. So thank you. And for our listeners, I hope you will continue to keep these ideas and opportunities in your mind and share them with others, right? Get involved in any way you can. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona. Some media leans left, some lean right, and we lean business. Until next time, I'm Kira Nowicki. Thanks for listening.